Bueno, okay, we are gonna start. This is the AI parallel session, and let me start introducing our panelists. And let me start saying that what I like very much about our panelists is that they have a great combination. I mean, and all together really will cover everything that we are talking these days about AI. We have, and I will deep dive into their bios, but we have the engineer perspective and background of AI, we'll have the business, and we'll have the policy and regulatory. And I think that this is what we are talking these days about AI, and if, in fact, if we don't get this right, I mean, probably we will not have the full potential of what AI can bring. Then let me start with Brad. Brad, thank you so much for being here with us today. Brad is the CEO of Symphony, a leading financial market infrastructure and technology platform. You're based in New York. Then you notice that we have changed the background. Now it's not New York anymore, it's Madrid. But you enjoy the New York background
Feels
for the whole morning. Brad has a background in financial services, and he knows very well what means AI for financial services, including 18 years in Goldman Sachs and financial service technology. Then welcome, Brad.
Thank you.
Let me introduce Javier, that is the next close to Brad. Javier Martinez is a head of engineering at Google Cloud Spain. Then close to my previous life, Javier. He's a telecommunications engineer with more than 20 years experience in IT. He managed clients' transition to AI applications in the cloud. Then another that is critical for financial sector, and maybe we can talk a little bit of the regulation going on with Andrea Renda. Andrea just communicated me that tomorrow he will have a new position. And congratulations, Andrea. We hope it's a good one, no? It's a, yes?
Hopefully so.
Okay. Then the new position is Director of Research for CEPS, is that correct? He is a professor at the European University Institute. He teaches AI and digital ethics and governance, which is extremely important when we talk about AI. And he's part of the OECD network of AI experts, is that correct? Then welcome all of us. Then let me do a few remarks, but we are here to hear from the experts, that is the three of you. But I mean, I don't know if it's correct to say, and maybe it's too basic, that ChatGPT has changed our lives, and then suddenly we realize what is AI about, right? And probably you as an expert, are you saying, such a basic things, no, that Barbara is saying. But it's true that ChatGPT, what has changed is the way that we talk about AI. It means that suddenly we realize that AI is here, that it's going to come here to stay, and that it's going to change the way that we do things, we communicate, and the most important thing, we do business. And we will hear more from you. I mean, artificial intelligence is not new. I have been in Google for 14 years, and for the 14 years that I have been in Google, we talk a lot about AI, then for sure it's not new. But I think that, as I said, it has become more real. But the same debates that we started 14 years ago remain. I mean, what is going to happen is a challenge, it's an opportunity. What are the ethics around AI? What are the principles? Shall we go for it and make the most, or shall we stop AI because it's going too fast, too far? When we talk about AI and finance, of course, I mean, we're looking to hear from you. I mean, this goes beyond a banking conference, but Santander is a bank, and we really want to understand how this means for the finance sector. Then before I ask a few questions to you, let me start asking, and raise your hands. How many have used here ChatGPT or BART, Javier, or other AI apps? Okay.
We didn't.
More or less, more than half, no? How many of you are a little bit scared when you put something in ChatGPT? Brad, okay, this is concerning. Okay, thank you. Not many we are scared, which I think is good. Then let me then start with an open questions for the three of you, okay? And why? Well, first of all, why are we, some of the people here concerned, some others they are not, but we are all talking about ChatGPT, generative AI. Why now it's different? Why we are talking about this? Why now realize that AI is here and in some occasions we are very concerned? And the other question then is two in one. What is going to happen? What is next? And I will say, what is next in the short, medium, and long term? What we should expect? And please, because you have so many different profiles, let's take advantage of your different profiles. Then what is going to happen in business? What is going to happen in technology? What is going to happen in regulation and policies? Shall we start with you?
Sure. So maybe queuing off of my very raised hand and Anna's comments earlier on optimist risk management. So I just think we all should be concerned where our data goes. It's sort of something I think about personally. So, you know, the idea, I think it's probably more worrying to me even that people aren't concerned about putting data into things. It could be ChatGPT, it could be Amazon, it could be anything. I think we should be a lot more concerned about where our lives are spread and then how that comes back around. So, you know, for me, from a business perspective, this is exciting. There's no doubt it's going to change everything. I would argue Turing really kicked this off with the cracking the code. But the reality is it's now so much more accessible, so much more impactful, 1,000 times impact than it was 50 years ago in terms of these technologies, which have been around for quite some time. 10 years from now, it will be 100,000 times what it is today. And then 10 years from that, quantum will be here and it will be 1,000,000 billion times whatever. I'm not smart enough to know what 1,000,000 billion trillion, but it's a lot. So the speed is happening, the access to efficiency is happening. We seem to be enthralled with fast access and efficiency and giving our data lives away as people. I don't know why, but we are, and I think that's why this is going to run so fast. You cannot stop tech, you can't stop rotation in orbit. It's just something that you can't prevent, you just have to try to manage, and there's a black and white, a good and bad side to all these technologies. And the morality, the ethics are really in the eye of the user, the beholder, and what you use these tools for. So I think it's complicated, it's big, and it's, for me, you know, 30, 35 years into working or doing something like this, it's absolutely the biggest moment in my career, and it's probably an add up of PC computing, software, the internet, and the cloud. Like many technologies are coming together to make AI an accessible reality. November 30th, 22, GPT birth. You know, that was a moment, but it's been brewing for, you know, gestating for much longer than a couple of years or even a decade or two, to be honest.
Brad, if I can ask a follow-up question. This is going very fast, as you said. The speed is, I mean, let's see if we can manage, right? Then my question to you is, which are the sectors that are going to be more disrupted by this speed? I mean, I guess that there were some that are going to be ahead of the curve, others that are going to be in catch-up mode, and others that simply they will not be able to make it.
Well, let me, I think there are maybe 12 sectors, I have no idea, but call finance a sector, and energy a sector, and technology a sector. It's been said before, but I think the base sector for all sectors is finance, because everybody needs capital. So in a Maslow hierarchy, it is the base. It sounds like we're doing God's work type quote at a hearing, Lloyd Blankfein, but it's actually not the case. It's just the reality that everybody needs capital to build a business for the most part. We're a pretty virtual world. We're relationships, we're data-driven as finance. I think there could be mass disruptions in our industry, period. We're one of the more disruptible, although there's lots of gates like regulation and people knowing people and trusting people. I think the energy sector will go through the most disruptions over time, but it will take the longest because it's a supply chain. It's much more challenging to put the IoT on the blockchain and the AI than it is just to put the bond data in the AI. So I think energy will be the bigger disruption, but will take longer. Okay. Technology is by definition disrupting itself through its own technology, so that's a given, and it's certainly in America, It's the nature of, mushrooms come, the trees grow, they die, the spores come, they kill the trees, and the new stuff comes. So that cycle of destruction and creation is real, and I've seen it through my career. I started on nothing but Lotus. That was the software I used in 1990. Just Lotus 123.
Lotus 123.
People may not know what Lotus 123 is in the room. Given Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, took it all out.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll come back to you later. Javier, from a technical point of view, and as a customer engineer that you are every day trying to move companies, sectors, from where they are to a cloud environment, right? And an AI in the middle of, as an enabler, as you know, Google and other cloud service providers once or used to talk about the role of cloud for companies. Then let us know how do you see that, and also what are the challenges that you are experimenting when you talk with customers?
Yeah, so this 2023 has been the year for generative AI. I mean, we were already mentioning, AI have been, around for a while, even, within finance, we do have a lot of experience using AI to make predictions, to actually, understand the data, like, risk assessment and so on, right? But generative AI is about large language model. By the way, I was really amazed that Anna Botín was mentioning them on the opening remarks. So this is something that we all need to know about, right? Large language models are coming with a new tool that we need to embrace, right? And the thing is that this year we've seen this becoming mainstream with tools like ChatGPT or Google Bard, right? Everybody in the society, have been some exposure, right? And it become, a thing like 10 months ago. And if you see how much the technology has evolved in these few months, it's just crazy, right? Because we've been doing AI for decades, and now suddenly, it come like a tsunami, right? So it's amazing to see what is going on. For me, the key thing when we speak about generative AI is that we are changing the interface. We are changing the way we interact with machines, with computers, with services, right? We used to need programmers. We need to, learn a programming language, have a very, specific way of instructing the machines. Now they understand us. So they understand the language. You can just talk to them or write to them in your natural language, and they will come with a report, they will come with a written text, they will come with an image, right? So it's fundamentally changing the way we interact. And it's a new tool set that we need to embrace. You are mentioning the spreadsheets, right? Calculators, if we go even back in time. Okay, we are wondering about the risks, but obviously, and we will talk about regulations later, but it's a new tool. We need to embrace this new tool because we need to be competitive. If we don't do that, all the people around us, all the competitors will embrace them, and they will be more skilled, more powerful. So I think that's the challenge, right? We need to get used to them.
Okay, it seems that speech writers are not going to have a job anymore. But who else will see their job changing, redefining, needs to re-skill themselves? And I know that in Google, the company is working a lot about re-skilling. Then where is that debate right now?
Yeah, that's a good point. We working on the computer science people, we've been developing this thing. You can imagine the best thing it does is programming. I'm not worried about my future, sorry. Because, yeah, it's going to be a new tool. It's going to code for me. It's going to write software for me. It's going to help and empower me, right? My job is going to change. My colleagues' job is going to change. Your jobs are going to change, right? It's everywhere because I don't think there's, almost every job out there is going to be impacted somehow by AI and generative AI. We need to embrace the change and find the new ways to, add our creativity, our value, because in the end, the humans are there to add value, right? If there's something that can be automated, let's automate it. Why not?
Before we go to Andrea, and this is because you say our jobs are going to change. Can you tell us how long we have.
One by one.
How long we have to re-skill ourselves. You said that it's going very fast. And when you say our jobs are going to change, we hear you, but I'm not sure if we believe you, or if we think that it's going to be in our time life, maybe for our kids, daughters and sons. How fast this is going to come? If you have to guess, any of you, this is an open question.
I think it's already here.
It's 5 years.
Okay, okay. There is an agreement here.
I just look at 1990, where I had sort of nothing, mainframe, cracking tapes, CD-ROM maybe. By 95, I had a Pentium, I had Excel, Word, the internet was on my desk on a Unix machine, Netscape. So that 5 years was massive, and then it took from 95 to 2012 for Walmart to have an e-commerce store. But that 5 years is going to be quite active and violent, I would say. And I was at my son's university, and the Career Center was asking me, what skill am I looking for across everybody I hire? And it's the prompter, hashtag. Person who can prompt something and get to that next step and iterate. Writing a document, building a model, writing software. The prompter skill is the skill, and if you're a banker that's good at prompting analysts, you're going to be gone as a managing director. Because you can just prompt yourself through your phone and build that PowerPoint in a minute, and there's no analyst working on a weekend to do that job for you in 3 to 5 years.
Okay, then 5 years, I'll put on, let's put on aside if we are how we are gonna be ready, in 5 years. But let me go to Andrea, because all these ambitions about speed and change, maybe regulation will not allow, sorry, this is a very provocative question. Maybe regulation will not allow us to get that far, that fast. Then how do you see, and that's why I like a lot this panel, right? The business ambition, where this can take us, the technology reality, and then we are gonna be now down on earth with regulation and policies. What is gonna happen? What is happening right now in your world?
So first of all, tackling your first question on why do you think it is happening now, why it's different. I think the key difference, as was already mentioned, is that we see now AI emulating our cognitive skills and interacting with us in a different way. So we see in AI something that might potentially confuse us, and indeed it comes from us, because these are systems trained on everything that we've been creating, on dialogues of human dialogues, for years and years and years. So what is coming back to us, it's the result of our own collective intelligence, with the possibility of predicting sequences of words that come from queries, right? So the idea that generative AI is now potentially having this additional, somehow creative element, meaning that it generates something that is based on past knowledge accumulated, but still something new. It's not exactly like anything that has been done before. And I think this is something that can scare us to some extent. And it's also not a massive change in what was happening before, but it's a result of putting a human interface to something that already was a transformer model, meaning the big change between GPT-3 and 3.5 that becomes ChatGPT is the interface that is more conversational. What OpenAI did not consider to be a massive change, but the fact that we now interact with it in a specific way changes things, right? What I think is going to happen forward, and that's my provocation to you before I get back to regulation, is that I would expect, before 5 years, these systems to become much more personalized. Meaning, it's inevitable for me that generative AI that is currently bringing back to us the result of our queries and the general knowledge in collecting a lot of information about us will now become our personal advisor. We're going to have a personal AI system and also personal banking advisor. So my provocation here is this is going to be the change that threatens the business model of Santander. And something has to be done about it. Otherwise, Barbara's decision to come back from Google to Santander will not have been a good one. People will make fun of you in a few years. Say, why the heck did you go back to? Which I think is actually a great choice.
Very optimistic that we will get
Let me be optimistic about it.
What about when Google buys Santander?
In public policy, we have come to realize over time that not everything that can be automated should be automated, right? Good example is competitiveness, right? When I started my tenure for 2 years as a member of the high-level expert group on AI for the European Commission, they asked me, first of all, to set the ethical rules for trustworthy artificial intelligence, and first, and second, tell the Commission how can we become more competitive in AI, which is a meaningful question, but not the most meaningful one. Because if I ask myself, what can Europe do for AI, then I fill all factories with robots and AI systems. If I ask myself how AI can help Europe achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 8, that of giving everybody full, a decent employment, a decent job, the answer in terms of how much gets automated is completely different. So Europe is specializing in having a human-centric approach to AI, one that respects the empowering of human being and human centricity also, meaning protecting fundamental rights and caring about safety. The answer, if you run this formula on current AI developments, the answer you get in terms of how many jobs get automated, how fast should AI go in permeating our lives is slightly different than the answer to the question, what if we embrace this with no parachute? And so is it in this gray area that we find the answer to some of our questions? There is a gray area, and then I'll stop so that we can continue the conversation. There is a gray area at the moment. The Global Partnership on AI just published with the ILO a report on automation and job replacement. They calculated that there's a gray zone or big unknown that is estimated as roughly 291 million people around the world, million jobs around the world, for which we don't know if it will be more augmentation or automation. And most of the answer there is endogenous. It depends on us, on the choices that we make, what gets automated and what doesn't. And with the additional external constraint that if we go too slow, as you were saying, Javier, others will go faster, and so in terms of global competitiveness, it will be a problem. I'll get back to more the details of regulation later if you want. I don't want to take too much time, but I really wanted to say this at the beginning.
Thank you. And I'm going to connect some dots here. Competing for growth, because AI has a lot to do about that. General Petro's comments about defense, warfare, and AI, and human rights, right? Because this is an important topic. Before we go to finance sector and how we are going to benefit or challenge by AI, let's deep dive a little bit into the defense space, because I think that we will see more investment on defense. General Petro's talk a little bit about AI and defense, and it's a lot about human rights principles and ethics going on there. And again, I remember in my old days in Google that was a big issue, right? And it's very related with the three of you. Then, Brad, what is from a business perspective, where do you think that this is going to go? And if there is exceptions on when we talk about AI and the capacity of AI when it's about using for defense purposes?
Yeah, and I had many triggers in the previous panels, including Anna's mentioning of AI, but I think your word personalization is important because, and I'll use the word granular or atomic. I think it's really important to think about this much more locally than we are, like literally at the town level, where the jobs are and the communities. I think when you think about Europe, the big challenge is it's not a country. It's a bunch of countries. So Greece is going to have a very different view than Spain, than France, than Germany. UK is part of it still. So what do you do at a more atomic, granular, local level that makes sense? Because things have to make sense, certainly on the job side, at a local level. Europe will definitely take a more keep employment up, keep labor up, a bit more socialist view. It's just baked into the cake of how Europe runs. The US will take a more, people will find their spots and we'll get there more by kind of that competitive drive to innovate. We also in the US have the luxury of a lot of technology companies and sort of that failing is an accepted thing and then you could build back. So I think there's a lot of culture in there, but just like sort of Ray Dalio's book, Changing World Order, so much of this stuff is so local. It gets to geography, it gets to religion, it gets to everything. And whatever we think in this room remember, the globe is quite separate as people, but is connected by technology now, and that's a very complicated thing, and AI is the manifestation of impact on world, deep fakes, job loss, job creation, and my guess is this region has a different view than North America, and has a different view than Asia and APAC, which has a different view than other parts of the world. So I think we have to be a lot more granular and then add those pieces up like a periodic table versus try to wash the world in an ESG formula.
Do you want to say something about defense or not?
I think it really, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about security. We're highly encrypted. If we ever get hacked, we're pretty much reputationally gone. So we can't have a data problem as Symphony. I'm very aware of what goes on in the deep state. I just have focused on it myself, and you cannot disconnect war from Halloween. Like, Halloween didn't happen because kids couldn't get costumes, right? Because supply chain, you know, a COVID war, whatever the war is at the time. People don't change easily, and I think these are all much more connected than people want to think, and we have to be talking about all of it openly. AI is a simple debate in reality. If you look at the world debates that are going on right now geopolitically, but it's all connected, it's all part of the Earth, we're living on it, it's heating up, we'll be on Mars with Elon, and that'll be that.
You said something interesting about personalization, you know, local community approach. It's very interesting because for those that develop AI technology, I mean, they want to be at scale, right? And they really want to, okay, this is the technology and you use it. Of course that they use, I mean, how much you can defer to the use, right, versus the technology. I mean,
I love superscalers as great enablers, but I'm sort of conservative on the end of all governance should be much more localized.
okay.
And that's the combination that we need to get. The big platforms plus the communities leveraging them to their benefit in the way they want to as families and firemen and bankers, right? It's bottom up and scalers down.
And you think that that is possible, that balance between, you know, global technology or global hyperscalers?
I think
apply?
Europe and the US has no choice to figure this out together.
Okay.
And the Googles, Microsofts, Apples, Metas need to think about the world, but probably should think a little bit more about working with the West and really enabling us and even securing us. You know, there's solar winds and so many things that happen out there, and they're all still many Easter eggs sitting in all of our kit.
Okay. Tell me about defense.
Okay, so I think it was part of the theme this morning. I was also an alferez at the Spanish Army.
Okay, wow.
But not an expert on
we
defense.
have a full army here. There is a lot of.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on defense at all. I do have a background.
But from your professional.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a background on cybersecurity, which is also super relevant when we speak about AI and all the developments that we have. Luckily, I work for a company that we decided to have our own ethics around AI. And I mean, back in the days, 2017, we took the decision to, stay away of some developments, right? For example, we don't develop weapons or anything that might cause harm to people, right? And this is one of the things that, is being debated. But we all need to be aware that there will be actors that will follow those developments. The whole industry around, defense is huge, so those things are gonna happen, right? So there's gonna be drones controlled by AI, there's gonna be monitoring systems controlled by AI, and so on, right? So luckily, I'm aware of this world, but we need to be aware, right? And I think this is up to the regulations that we need to find and to define as a society, because this is, overcoming what a single company is thinking.
Yeah, and until now, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, until now, everything related with going into the defense space has been very much with an auto-regulation approach, principles approach, very little about proper regulation. Is that right?
Certainly it is right.
Is Europe thinking about going into that space and be very specific about what can be done and what cannot be done with AI on this sector?
I would say not at the moment, meaning the Artificial Intelligence Act does not cover military applications. Of course, it covers dual-use applications to the extent that the civilian part could also influence the military one, but even in that case, the regulatory remedies in the AI Act would not be meaningful. And I say the defense applications and things like lethal autonomous weapons and things like this, first of all, it doesn't seem to be, the right time to talk about them. You heard about General Petraeus. We are having a massive deployment of these weapons currently in Gaza, and we will have more and more. There's not momentum for discussing these things now. When there will be momentum again, it will be about international treaties and international negotiations, not about regulation at the domestic level. That said, there has been in the AI space a lot of shift of attention from fundamental rights, from sustainability towards safety. That is not necessarily because of military applications, but because, pardon me the term, a bunch of people in Silicon Valley and other parts of the world has tried to shift the attention of the debate towards the fact that generative AI might lead to the extinction of the human race, which I think is BS, which is an acronym that stands for nonsense, right?
Okay.
And if I could, one point on that, I think what's happened is the AI or the social media and the impact on the kids, that's what I think has shifted the debate a bit. Social media is an AI feed, and it's certainly hitting the kids hard, and I think the TikTok debate in the US has become part of that fabric, and people are starting to think about intent, which is important up front. I think incrementalization is important. Incremental intelligence, that's my 3I. Have intent day one, do things incrementally, and develop some. You don't learn everything overnight. I mean, I'd love to plug into the matrix and become a kung fu artist, but it just doesn't work that way.
And I guess that fake news and I think that in the following months we will have 60% of the countries going through elections. Then I guess that AI can play a very important role there. I mean,
fake news is relatively trivial versus deep fakes, which is truly looks like you ran a debate on stage with presidents that never happened. That's not a tweet with mischaracterizing somebody's debate. You could literally put a presidential debate on stage and put it around the world, and if people don't really have the internet, they'll think that was the Republican debate.
No, and that is interesting, and in fact, something that can really impact the finance services in general, right? Then let me go to the finance service in terms of opportunities more than challenges. Please talk about challenge if you want. I would like to leave some, minutes for a Q&A, because I think that we have the opportunity to have a smaller audience. Then we will open the floor. I don't know if this was part of the agenda, but we will open the floor for questions. Okay, let's, and there is many things, fake news, jobs, skills, but I really want to invest a little bit of time about finance sector to see if there is a bright future. No, there is not.
No, the future is bright. I have a website that says it, bradfordlevy.com. It's literally the headline of my website, bradfordlevy.com. It's my personal website.
Okay, then Brad, let us know a little bit, with your experience as a person that has been in the finance sector for very long.
So there's things that are pretty simple. Settlements.
Okay.
Bonds and stocks need to settle. There's a lot of machine learning that is applied today to finding out the one that's failed. In the sea, how do you find the needle in the haystack?
Yeah.
And that's happening today, and it's been going on for some time. The future is, are there 35 needles landing in a bunch in 4 quarters? Actually predicting that something's going to get much messier based on intelligence about counterparties, times of day and year. If you're with a big Asia firm and they're settling a lot in the US, they will not be as effective settling trades, literally, and you can predict that. So I think settlements can be easily known, machine learned, and then AI'd. Research and all the ESG analytics and all of that is already big. We have a product amenity that does that, and that's going to become a much more, and by the way, there's E, S, and G. I think S is one of the more interesting things to solve for in the whole framework with AI, or at least get into. And then there's the recommendation engines that are more human assist today in, say, wealth management and bankers. Those are going to become recommendation engines in 5 to 10 years, maybe shorter, without the human assist. And that's a big change. The human assist will get us there. But the training wheels will come off, and people will just be buying stocks and bonds because Alexa told them to.
And I guess that will give humans a space to do things that are more added value, or no?
We are very good at finding things to do,
Yeah.
Unless you're a 14-year-old teenage boy, and then you have to keep them busy. But other than that, humans, find ways to create value and purpose, at least the ones that I hang around with.
Yeah. Okay, let me move to Andrea, and something that has been discussed, US versus Europe, Europe versus the world, Asia. Do you think Europe is well positioned here? I mean, what do you see maybe things that we are doing right, and AI will help us to be more competitive? We talk about Europe losing a little bit of competitiveness. Is AI something that can help us? Or is the other way around? I mean, we also talk about international treaties. This is very interesting, right? Because when we talk about fragmentation, one of the problems that we are seeing, and we are seeing this with all the ESG regulation, is that if each of the countries or regions has its own framework, it's going to be very hard for companies as us that compete in a global environment, right? Then where is going to be Europe in all this? I mean, it's going to not taking advantage only on regulation. It's more ambitious than that. They want to have
it is more ambitious
AI players, big AI players.
The problem is the difference between ambition and concrete plans, right? Back in 2020, the European Commission presented a white paper on artificial intelligence and committed to creating an ecosystem of trust, which mostly comes with standards and regulations, and an ecosystem of excellence by investing in AI and in the development and the deployment of AI in Europe. We've seen a lot of initiatives on the ecosystem of trust, and I'll qualify what I mean here. I think it's a mixed result at the moment. We haven't seen much on the ecosystem of excellence. At the moment, we don't see concrete plans to create the ecosystem of excellence in Europe. We have 4 places in continental Europe where AI has been deployed at significant scale. These 4 places don't talk to each other. Basically, they correspond to Île-de-France, Paris, Eindhoven, Munich. These are the places, and inner London, by the way.
They talk or they don't talk?
They don't. They are more connected to Stanford or to the US than between themselves.
Then we add Granada to this list.
And Granada, hopefully so. Hopefully so. And Andalusia also, as Sevilla, the new Center for Algorithmic Transparency will help perhaps there. But if you see the data at the moment, we see very sparse developments, insufficient development. On the regulatory side, the EU was a trailblazer. We started a debate back in 2017-18. We got to the ethical principle for trustworthy AI. We launched a debate on the first ever comprehensive legislation on AI. In the European Commission, people were happy because they would see the materialization of what people call sometimes too optimistically the Brussels effect. But what we have seen, even yesterday, changes the picture significantly. First of all, as the AI Act is not finalized yet, might see perhaps the light on the Spanish presidency, or maybe less optimistically on the Belgian presidency of the Council of the EU in the next semester. It means we will enter into force in 2-3 years. There will have to be standards. There's a standardization process in between. So meanwhile, the European Commission has started looking at more self or co-regulatory ways, softer ways to strike deals with large technology companies. It hasn't managed to do that. It has proposed a code of conduct. Meanwhile, the US has taken over by coming up with voluntary commitments for 15 tech companies. They passed on to the G7 the idea of a code of conduct. Yesterday, the G7 published a code of conduct for generative AI. And at the same time, the United States came up with an executive order, which is massive in scope and does a little bit to the AI sector what the IRA does to the green transition. It leverages procurement power, it leverages the federal agencies, sectoral regulators, it leverages resources, it really leverages the potential to attract talent. So it uses not just a regulatory leverage, but uses regulatory, fiscal, investment, innovation, industrial policy, and thereby overtaking the EU, even on the regulatory side, which I think is a space where the EU might have to respond quickly and in a way that aligns to a large extent with the US. One area where we can do this is the Trade and Technology Council between the EU and the US, where there is a specific working group on AI. But if we do this, I think there is a chance that through G7 and perhaps through the UN process that is also ongoing, there will be less fragmentation in rules on AI, but the European contribution to the new rules will not have been massive. It will have been the contribution of an initiator and also some texturing of the rules and the orientation of these rules towards trustworthy AI principles.
Andrea, do you think that when Europe looks at AI and regulation, thinks about business, I mean, how AI can make business more competitive? And here, and I'm going to ask you a question, Javier, and I don't know if you don't know the answer, but apologies if not.
But I'm going to give you a telegraphic answer because I want to leave space to my fantastic co-panelists, but a provocative one, okay? So I think,
who is for Javier or for Brad, right?
I think, and I want to give you an answer on the banking sector and finance in general on this. So I think the EU thinks about mostly risk mitigation when regulating, and the innovation-oriented proposals and measures should come elsewhere in EU legislation, spending programs, investments, and they are not there yet. So I think the next European Commission and European Parliament have to massively invest there. But second, there is a part of regulation that really thinks about European businesses and gives them a chance to survive, and this includes Santander, in my opinion. So I want to connect the dots of the personalization, the personal banker, GPT or Bard becoming someone who commoditizes the underlying bank, if you wish. So I'm going to be the interface between you and your investment. I'm going to personalize them. Forget about the MiFID interview, right? This is going to be done automatically by the generative AI. With compute infrastructure, access to account holders' data, think about PSD2, so the Second Payment Services Directive, that gives tech giants the possibility to access the only data they didn't have. And all this, there is limited opportunity for banks to survive with a business model that tries to replicate this much more comprehensive re-intermediation trend. What is the chance? In my opinion, it's regulation. The Digital Markets Act and the Data Act are trying to create the preconditions for data to be unbundled from those business models. So if I were Santander today, I would actually invest in setting up data intermediaries that are separate from my business model, but anyway, give a chance to consumers to take out the data from the business models of the large gatekeepers, as we call them in the Digital Markets Act, and take them to a third party that can manage the data in a trustworthy way and gives a chance to players in the real economy, such as banks now. Once we were called the financial economy, now they are more real incumbent players than the digital technology giants to survive. And this would be very good news for European consumers. So the finance or banking data space, the Digital Markets Act, the Data Act, look at those pieces of legislation because they are meant to rebalance a world that otherwise would be completely reintermediated and concentrated in very few hands. I'll leave you with one figure that was given by Commissioner Breton 2 years ago, and I think it's largely valid today. Was largely known inside the European Commission, was made public in a speech by Thierry Breton. More than 90% of the data produced by European citizens and businesses are currently in the hands of 4 cloud-based giants in the US, which is not bad news in and of itself, but it poses problems of the development and the capture of value in the European economy.
Look, I agree with you. There is pieces of regulation out there that give us a lot to do as banks and a lot of opportunities. You mentioned Digital Market Act. You mentioned also data in general, and we celebrate what, that data are being open for banks, but we celebrate that will be open for other sectors, and that's where we see that we can make the most, right? All of us, I mean, and especially for citizens and customers and Europe about this data-driven economy. Then agree very much with you, and we are on that, in fact. And on that note, Javier, we will finish with you before we go to the audience and see if they have questions. But on finance sector, and let me tell you something that, again, I mean, apologies, it's not to put you on the spot. I mean, you can say, I don't know, but there is some discussions going on right now in Europe about cloud, right? And the capacity of specific sectors to use cloud service providers that are not Europeans. then we see that playing as a huge disadvantage for European companies. Then it's true that what is the rationale behind that, and Andrea can correct me, is a little bit of an extra protectionism and this European strategic autonomy that maybe it's a good concept, but when you go very far, I mean, sometimes you can put yourself in a difficult situation. Then from a cloud service provider point of view, right, that you are all the time with customers and with finance service customers, let us know a little bit about, the benefits of that, but also, I mean, if you can say something about what I mentioned about, some specific sectors not having access to cloud service providers that are not Europeans.
Yeah, so not that easy one, obviously, and yeah, I work for an American company, but I'm also a European citizen, right? So that's something that we need to balance. It's true that as service providers, the main thing that we are actually giving access to is technology, right? So the time to market, the benefits you get from relying on someone that is already developing this technology, managing infrastructure at a huge scale, it's amazing. It makes you more competitive, right? Being in this global world, I mean, it makes you, stay competitive, because otherwise, there will be people, like we were mentioning before, leveraging this technology, this access, to actually be faster than you. I would like to mention that this is a two-way relationship. We have a very nice example with Santander. There is the Gravity project. Many of you might know it. We call it Dual Run at Google. It's a piece of technology that was developed here in Spain, in Europe, and we are marketing this to the world, right? So
developed by Santander.
Developed by Santander, right? It's to modernize mainframe workloads. So it's a very nice example that is not a one-way thing. It's a partnership, it's a collaboration. So I think it's needed to understand that, this is something that is already happening, and it's not only us receiving from the States.
Okay. Thank you. I'm conscious that we had 8 minutes, and now we have suddenly 3 minutes. Then I don't know how this works, but time flies.
I saw 5
especially when someone is, managing technology behind the scenes here. But at least we can have 2 questions. If there is someone that have questions.
Top, back.
Okay, up there. I think that we need a micro. Yeah, if someone can bring a micro.
There is a microphone there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Where is? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay, I have the light. Okay, then one question here with Diego, and the other one at the back of the room.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Diego López Garrido. I'm the director of a Spanish think tank called Fundación Alternativas, and we are now working in relation with artificial intelligence and human rights. Then I have a direct question to the panelists. Do you think that artificial intelligence is a danger for human rights?
It could be, I would say. There is a statement that Stephen Hawking made a few years ago, saying that he said in the following 100 years, probably now we are closer, much closer, I would say, those machines are going to be smarter than us, right? So we better align their interests to ours, right? So it's up to us, to the ones developing the technologies that really, embed these, rights and interest, so they are developed in the right way. But there is a danger.
And just a quick point, all technology have light and dark. Eric Schmidt said it, if it's the periodic table assembled, iron, magnesium, mercury, they can give you life and kill you in different assemblies and quantities. So all technologies can be used by bad people to do bad things, and then some just technologies have a bit of a disruptive force and can impact humans on the planet. So all technologies, it could be what Da Vinci did was build a tank many, many years ago that became a tank. And so I think we just have to figure out all technologies are light and dark, and we have to assume that up front and not think we can regulate it or monitor it away.
Agree that bad uses of artificial intelligence are certainly a threat to human rights. Uncontrolled and uncoordinated uses of artificial intelligence can also be. So even without the bad intention, a danger to human rights. I was asked this question by the European Commission in 2020 because I did this study that was the impact assessment of the Artificial Intelligence Act. They were asking me, is it just about discrimination or are other fundamental rights potentially affected? If you look at the emerging evidence already back then, basically all human rights, all fundamental rights are affected and potentially compressed or enhanced and protected in a more effective way if you use properly artificial intelligence.
Okay, we have one last question because now it says 0, 0, a lot of zeros here. Then the last question, yes?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, so kind of leading on from that human rights element, one of the live debates around the ethics of AI is around kind of bias and discrimination. So on a basic level, if you ask ChatGPT to draw you a nurse, it will draw you a woman. How is this risk being mitigated? And if it's not mitigated, what do you think the impact will be on the rollout of AI in financial services?
I can, of course, take it, but yeah. Well, how is it being mitigated? There is already pressure on the private sector to mitigate that. Google is a good example. They had principles on this since many years, or years before legislation started to emerge. In the EU legislation, the AI Act singles out specific applications of AI that are considered to be high risk and subjects them to a sort of a conformity assessment process, which looks at ways to mitigate risks of discrimination. Now, while this legislation is pending, and similarly the US new executive order looks at that, the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights in the US does that, many of the other legislative frameworks around the world, all the way to the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI, try to limit that. What you see in practice as these frameworks are still pending or being finalized, many countries, it's not just China, I can mention the Netherlands, but also in Spain there's been some evidence. Governments are using ways to profile people that potentially are discriminatory. So predictive policing practices, but also applications of algorithms in order to, for example, capture tax fraud or, anyway, single out citizens for bad or good behavior are emerging. They are very efficient, but they're also potentially highly discriminatory. We as society are going to have to decide how much we push that boundary to eliminate, let's say, cross-subsidization across citizens in the name of justice and meritocracy, but where this pushing the boundaries too far actually becomes a violation of key fundamental rights.
And you may look to China and India for experiments on digital social
credit scoring.
Yeah. I can share that. There is a huge effort in trying to be conscious of what we are doing, right? At Google, we say that we are developing responsible AI. So many times we are not the first to market because of the effort that we are taking to actually make sure that the data is not biased and we have, a diverse set of people working for a particular project. So it takes an effort. Obviously, we are not perfect. And then the other thing is that there are other players that they might want to come first to market, they might want to go faster, and they might care a little bit less, right? So we see these examples, unfortunately. But yeah, many of us, we are really, caring what we do around this thing.
Okay, then with this note about principles, ethics, we are gonna close this parallel session.
There's people waving hands there.
I know,
Up to you, Barbara.
I know. Okay, well, you, because you have the micro. And Anna said that rules are there to break it, then let's go ahead. But just one, very short one.
Fantastic, thank you very much. My name is Santiago Mauri, I work for Intesa. I wanted to know, generally speaking, I see government, particularly European government, being slightly behind the curve in understanding where innovation technology is taking us and the impact that they have in our life. A small example, when ChatGPT started offering their services in Italy, it came out in all the newspaper that the Italian Data Protection Authority blocked ChatGPT. What has been further my understanding was that the Italian authority has asked ChatGPT in several ways, calling them or via email, how do you profile Italian customers that will be using your platform? And just ChatGPT just decided not to answer and unplug the service to Italy. So this also shows who's more powerful today. A weak local government with a 2-3 years time horizon in front of them, given the next election round, or those big tech giants. Therefore, if I look at China instead, being an autocratic system and not having such a short time frame in their horizon, tries somehow to rule and ask themselves what would be the effect on my youngster, for instance, of social media and the use of video game. Therefore, to tackle the video game, they passed a law for which minors cannot play video games until Friday night, not in any school days, only 1.5 hours per day. And in order to really implement it, they forced the producer of video games to include facial recognition. Therefore, you cannot avoid using credentials or of someone else. You mentioned TikTok. The algorithm of TikTok in China makes your video viral if you set an example. If you are an example for the society and people can be inspired by your good action. In Europe or in the US, TikTok algorithm makes you viral if you do silly jokes to your grandmother, which is far from being an example for anyone. Therefore, to close, the question is, if most of government are not strong enough to face those challenges, are only autocratic regimes somehow be in a position in the future to really tackle those issues, which is, again, another big problem. Thank you very much.
Who wants to answer in 30 seconds? Because I'm seeing that people is hungry.
Yeah, too much food for thought, so now it's time for food, I guess. But I would say the following. It's true, the Italian Data Protection Authority just noticed that ChatGPT was not non-compliant with the GDPR. And so it's just a normal application of the law. We've seen OpenAI, Sam Altman, the CEO, going to the Senate in the US and saying, please regulate us, we're like nuclear weapons. But when he landed in Brussels, then he looked at the AI Act and said, but not this way, because if you regulate it this way, I'm actually going to pull the plug on Europe. I think there are many ways in which governments can still exercise pressure, not only autocratic regimes. China has seen the danger coming from GPT and has regulated already generative AI by making sure that it will become aligned with socialist values, because you cannot just leave this as a ticking bomb. Someone asks about China and an answer is not aligned with the Communist Party's view, right? I think what can happen here is, in particular for the European Union, we have a double commitment and a double necessity to invest in our single market and in our competitiveness, going back to the theme of the conference, because the day we cannot leverage what Francesco Starace defined before, like the richness and the wealth of our single market, by strengthening our bargaining power vis-a-vis these players, then this is the day that Zuckerberg pulls the plug on Threads because there's too much regulation in Europe in the new sort of Twitter-style service of Facebook. Sam Altman pulls the plug on GPT, and so on and so forth. At the moment, they cannot really credibly do that because the European market is too big for them. But if we don't nurture it, in the future, maybe they'll be able to do that credibly.
Okay, thank you very much. With this final statement from Andrea, we are going to close this parallel session. Thank you all of us for being here with us today. Big applause to Brad, Javier, and to Andrea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now it's time for lunch. I mean, it's going to be easy for you to find it. There will be people guiding you all the way to lunch. Enjoy. Thank you.
Gracias.